All right, so this is a special Seller Sessions episode for a couple reasons. One of which is we're actually doing this one in person, which in the Amazon FBA game, certainly in my experience, has been really rare. I think I've done one in-person interview. So, COVID set off the Zoom fury, and we've done most of our stuff via Zoom and virtual. So it's super cool, number one, to do this in person. I'm at my place in Park City. And the second reason that this is really exciting is I literally have one of my favorite people in the Amazon space here at my house for this conversation. Anthony Cofrancesco, dude, great to have you at my house and great to have you here for Seller Sessions.
Dude, thanks so much for having me here. I'm really excited to be on Seller Sessions, and thanks for letting me crash at your place.
Yeah. So if anybody wants to ski in Park City, hit me up, because Anthony did so, I don't know, a couple months back, and we've been planning this for a while. So it's good to do this stuff in person, man. We live in the laptop lifestyle, which is amazing for 95% of things, but 5% of the stuff not being able to hang out with people in person is kind of a bummer. So it's cool to have you here. All right, so why I wanted to chat with you, first of all, you've been in the Amazon game for quite a long time in a lot of different facets, and I'm always fascinated by people that have been in this space for a while. I just think that history of experience and wisdom is really interesting. But you've seen a ton of businesses and a ton of accounts. So you had an agency that you built and sold in the early days. You were with PickFu as one of the leading thought leaders there. You're literally one of the best presenters I've seen on the circuit, and I've seen a ton, not to diss anybody else, but you're definitely one of the best. And now, more recently, you've kind of gotten involved with DataDev, which is a really cool software company. But within all that, I think what's also really exciting for me about you and why I'm drawn to you is just lifestyle design. Like, you've just done it the right way. You live life on your terms. You figured out the glitches in the matrix and kind of living life on your terms, which is interesting. So I want to get into all of that. And maybe we'll start off with the Amazon stuff, like way back when you actually worked at Amazon.
Yeah.
So tell us about that, and then just how you got into the space in general.
Yeah, I mean, I started my career at Amazon. Before I started working there, a buddy of mine, I went to school at the University of Florida before I dropped out, and a buddy of mine, his name is Eric, he taught me how to sell on Amazon before I started my full-time job. I got to go to my first Amazon conferences, and then I started working at Amazon full-time. I launched a product before I started working there, and then after being there for about a year, I loved the job, loved working at Amazon. He said, hey, why don't you quit your job, move out to the Philippines and help me. He had a creative agency that he made, and he said, why don't you come out and help me scale it? And so that's kind of, that's where the whole thing started. And yeah, I've been in the industry for quite a while, and yeah. So
I guess just for interest's sake, what's it like working at Amazon? What's being in the belly of the beast?
I loved it. I thought it was great. It's a great culture if you want to work hard and you want to move really fast. The only thing that I didn't like about it was kind of what you're talking about, lifestyle design. I had a really flexible schedule where I only had to go in 4 days a week. And so I could travel like 3 days. But that wasn't enough for me. The only thing I didn't like about it is that I had to physically be in Houston, Texas, and I was always trying to come back from trips. At the time, I was in a long distance relationship, and I was like just trying to manage doing that. And so when Eric was like, hey, move out to the Philippines, I was already at Amazon looking at transferring to like anywhere out of the country. I just wanted to be, not in Houston, Texas. So
yeah, that's awesome. So you move out to the Philippines, pretty big shift. You move into a completely different, you're in the same space, but completely different side of the space. Walk us through the agency life. How long was that process, and what was that experience like for you?
Yeah, so that was 2 years long. It was a creative agency called Virtuous Graphics. When I got there, they had like 7 or 8 employees, and my business partner, Eric, was like, we just want to scale this thing as big as we can. So I was coming in as a director of operations and just hiring, the teams. We added on a video and copywriting to we already did photography and graphic design. So it was like full service creative management. And it was the first business that I'd ever run. And it was definitely the hardest thing that I'd ever done in my life. And my business partner, he had more experience, being an entrepreneur and running businesses. And I'm a pretty vulnerable person. I'll tell you, there was many times that I would like come to him and I was crying, like, dude, what the hell are we going to do? And it's funny because the longer you go on in business, you just realize nothing's a big deal. You can just recover from it. But that was the first time. It was very stressful. But we did a good job, and we grew the team to more than 30 employees, and we managed, it's cool to see people years after at these conferences, and they're like, I was a client with Virtuous Graphics. And I always ask them, like, well, how did it go? Was it good or bad? And, you know, a lot of the times it was really good. And, you know, you hear these success stories of people selling to aggregators, people who are clients, like people I still have relationships with. So good experience. Yeah. And that's where I learned about creatives.
It's funny looking back on my entrepreneurial journey specific to Amazon. I remember like getting stressed out about like setting up shipping plans, and like somebody left a defective thing and it's like the world's over. And it's funny how as time goes on, as you kind of get thicker skin and run through the gauntlet that is building businesses, things get a lot easier. One of my favorite quotes, and you're a cyclist, so you might appreciate this, but Eddie Merckx was one of the most famous cyclists of all time. He's like, it never gets easier, you just get faster, which is like, it's a good analogy, right? Like you're looking back on your time in the Philippines, I'm sure you're like, oh man, that was not worth crying over, but it's part of the process of becoming an entrepreneur, right?
Yeah, it's all perspective. Things, it probably doesn't even get easier. It's just, you realize that in the grand scheme of things, you can really mess up a lot and still do well in the end.
Yeah.
You know?
So you guys ended up actually selling to an aggregator, which was pretty unique at the time.
Yeah, it was a strategic thing for them. It was a small aggregator in Southeast Asia called Alpha Rock Capital. And so they were based out of the area. We had a good creative team. What they really wanted more than anything was they wanted a team of creatives that could service all of their brands, because they had like, I don't know, 10 or 15 brands at the time, and they wanted to get more and be able to, you know, just use that team. And the team was really good. The work was really, really top notch.
Yeah. So it was kind of an acqui-hire, basically.
Exactly. Yeah.
Cool. And then did you stay on in transition, or did you flip right over to PickFu at that point?
So I stayed on for like, I don't know, I guess about 6 months. And then after that, they kind of like put in an entirely different management structure. And I took a little bit of time off. You know, I was still like, I'd been financially independent since I was in high school. So I like took, you know, everyone's like, oh, sweet, you sold a business. And it's like, yeah, most of that money went to paying student loans. And it was not like I could never work again, right? It wasn't like the biggest exit. And I only owned a portion of that. And so I knew that I wanted to stay in the industry, because I could see this was before, you know, aggregators really blew up. And I could see this, this is the place to be for sure. And so I was thinking about what to do next. And I had met Justin and John, the founders of PickFu, at Prosper Show like a year before. And we had done a really cool collaboration. And what I really liked about PickFu, we were one of the first agencies to start publicly using PickFu to start doing main image testing. And what I really liked about PickFu is it was a great product, but when I met Justin and John, I was like, okay, these guys are a little bit more introverted engineering types. And so I pitched them. I was like, let me come on. Like, you know, I just sold my agency. I'm not worried about the money. Let me come on and just help. I'll make sure everyone in the industry knows about PickFu. And they gave me a shot at it, right? And that's what I did,
Cool. And I would say mission accomplished. I mean, you were, they were lucky to have you. I think that you definitely put them on the map and did a lot of amazing things growing that business for sure.
Yeah, and I have nothing but the best things to say about Justin and John. I've worked for a lot of bosses, and they were for sure just the most amazing people to work for. A great time there.
That's awesome. So let's talk about that like first couple chapters of your journey, because I think within that, it was very much around visually representing brands on Amazon specifically. And I think this is one of the, most critical pieces, which is how do you relay in milliseconds your offer to people? You know, looking at the customer experience of people buying online specific to Amazon, they're typing in a keyword, they're scrolling down a page of ads, you know, organic ranking, there's a lot of distractions. So much hinges on your success, regardless of how good your business is behind the scenes, regardless of how good your product is. If you can't visually represent it properly, get people to actually click and ultimately address the thought process as they go through buying a product and actually getting them to convert, it's all for naught, you know? And I think Amazon's set up a lot of things to help with trust and conversion and all those things that play into that formula. But in those first two chapters, you've done some amazing presentations that I've seen on the circuit, like hacking the brain. What were some of the biggest discoveries you would say in all the listings you've seen and all the graphics work you've done and all the PickFu tests you've kind of curated, people you've consulted with? What are some of those like marquee foundational elements for you in terms of building really kick-ass listings?
I think what it really comes down to, like you said earlier, when people are on Amazon, if they type something into the search bar, 75% of the time, the average conversion rate on Amazon for a Prime shopper is like higher than 75% now. So the vast majority of the time, if someone types in like a red spatula, they are going to buy a red spatula. It's just a question of, will they buy yours, or are they going to buy one of the other 15, 20 people who are selling something very similar? And so when you think that someone is going to buy the product, they're just going in for validation of which one of these is the best value, which is actually going to serve my needs. And so when it comes down to creative optimization, you really just got to give people exactly what they're looking for. And the biggest kind of aha moment for me is that it's not always what looks the best that's going to convert the best. It's actually more important than anything else is the flow of information.
Okay.
Right. So they have a mental checkbox. Customers have a mental checkbox in their head of like, here's the 5 things I need to know before I click add to cart. And whoever does the best job of communicating that efficiently, like into their brain, it's going to see the highest conversion rate. And that's something I've been working on for a while, like years of trying to come up with like metrics and other, I guess more concrete ways to look at, is this image going to be effective? And I think it really just has it really has the most to do with how quickly is someone's brain going to be able to look at an image, comprehend what's going on, and does it check off those boxes in their head, right? Like, does that match up?
So tactically, let's start with the listing image, maybe kind of whittle down from that. What are some of the things from listing images that you've seen absolutely kill it? Like, what set them apart from other listing images in the space?
I think the biggest advice that I can give someone is one single concept per image.
Okay.
Right. So if I'm thinking, hey, I'm trying to think of like, I've got a monitor here and I could talk about the sizing, I could talk about compatibility, I could talk about how bright it is, or, I could talk about all of these things. Right. But you got to think when someone's shopping on Amazon, we'd love for them to like read all of our A+ content and watch our videos. But the reality is they're just trying to get in, out, back on with their life. And so sure, I could talk about 5 concepts in one image, or I could talk about one concept in one image, one concept in another, one concept in another. The reason my presentations are really good is because if you've seen the talks, right, it's like 100 slides in 60 minutes. And so what am I doing? I'm talking about one thing at a time. People see it, it clicks in their brain, right? So that's the biggest thing, one concept per image. When I talk about hacking the brain, like the human brain is a giant graphics processor. It's like 90% of all of the information that goes to your brain is just processing visual signals. So you got to think they're looking for something. One concept per image, like make your image gallery like a slideshow. Like here's thing number 1, thing number 2, thing number 3, 4, 5 in order of priority.
Yeah, that's awesome. So what do you think's next for listings on Amazon if we look forward? And for me, there's been a pretty big professionalization in the space, which is, I think, taking place in 2 forms. One, you've got a lot of traditional omni-channel brands and businesses that didn't rely on Amazon, but now need to rely on Amazon.
Right.
So they bring, $20,000 photo shoots to the equation. They've got, creative agencies, all that stuff. So they're bringing a pretty big bazooka to the party in terms of creative. And then you've got your more traditional entrepreneurial Western sellers, which I think a lot of the audience of Seller Sessions is. I'm certainly part of that. And then you've got the Far East sellers, which have also gotten really damn good at graphics. So what do you think is next? Like if we look forward the next couple of years in terms of graphics, listings on Amazon, who are the winners going to be?
I think for sure, anyone trying to attribute any kind of data to images, I think we often look at anything related to creativity and we're like, this is magic, I can't touch it. But the reality is there's things that consistently work over and over again. And so I think the sellers you're already seeing it, right? Like people who are trying to establish what's a format for my niche or my product that's going to actually allow me to convert. Like if I would go into any niche right now, like a garlic press is a good example, a very competitive and well-established niche. If I would go and look at the top 20 competitors for that product, I'm going to find that in the image galleries, people are following in their image position 2 and 3. Vast majority of people are going to say what is a garlic press, how to use it, and then dishwasher safety. And that's going to be in the first 3 image spots. So if you start looking at this and attributing this type of image is in this, you're going to find that 70% of people have this type of image in image position 2 or 3 based on priority. So just from looking at data, I think you're going to be able to see a lot of things. And it's going to be pretty clear what works. Going on top of that, I think is going to be some customization, right? It's like a friend of mine, he sells, it's like a grilling product, and I'm here and I'm at your house and you have this really cool smoker outside. And so I already know what all of the competitor listing images look like for that product. But I also know that no one has a picture of anyone in a snow environment in the winter actually smoking outside. Yeah. And so getting to holidays, getting to different times of the year, you're consistently rotating through these image galleries because last year you knew, hey, during the winter time, we're going to change our image gallery to be something that's a winter focused or a fall focused grill accessories, and it's going to convert higher, right? Yeah. And you're just going to be testing all of these different variations to see what works. So I think, just looking at the data and then just trying different things to see what's going to give me my highest conversion rate at different points of the year.
Cool. So I might be handing you a bit of a loaded gun here. but I want your honest opinion on this. Amazon's gotten really good at A/B tests.
Yeah.
And there's, I guess, a couple camps of thought. Obviously, for new products, you can't use Amazon A/B testing, and you need to kind of go out into the world and find out what people think.
Yeah.
But for existing Amazon products, and you've got brand registry, you can run your own A/B tests. Do you recommend and think it's best to use Amazon's own A/B test data on actual customers or external services like PickFu and others to run tests post-launch once you've actually got a product out in the wild?
Yeah, I mean, not a loaded question at all. Even when I was at PickFu, like we're well aware of Amazon, and Amazon's the cream of the crop, right? Amazon's going to give you the real data. There's no question that what you'll see on PickFu or another service like that, it's not necessarily the truth, right? This is just 100 people or 50 people that are giving you their opinion, and you got to wonder, who are these people? Are they really the target market that you're selecting? I think majority of time with services like PickFu, they really clean up their audience. But with some of the other ones, maybe not so much. At the end of the day, PickFu is very helpful as a precursor to that kind of testing. It can give you a general idea of where to go. The thing with manager experiments is like, it's a longer time frame, right? And so you got to think like, if you're doing multi-stage, even when I've done A/B testing through Amazon, I'm probably going to do a little bit of PickFu testing in advance to see, okay, I can do these tests really fast in like 30 minutes to an hour, just so that I can get an idea for the concepts that I want to bring in. The other thing too is like, where people go wrong with services like PickFu is they're like, okay, here's my main image, right? Like, which main image is better? Which one are you more likely to buy? PickFu really shouldn't be used for that so much. It should be used more for like, it's more, you're not so much thinking about like, okay, what are people answering? It's like, why are they answering this?
Yep.
Right. So when you're split testing on Amazon, you're going to see, hey, this main image won. This had a higher, conversion rate, click-through rate, whatever it is. And you're going to see that it's going to make my sales go up, but you won't know why. And so where PickFu can be helpful is like, you're going to get actually written responses from different people. So if you have something of like, why do you like this product packaging more? It's not necessarily like, oh, this one on PickFu, I'm going to put it on my listing. It's like, ooh, people really like this aspect of it. And then you want to double down. You want to make your new variations contain those things and then test it on Amazon.
Okay.
But not enough people test on Amazon. I've been talking about this for years. Like, every time I talk, who's using manager experiments? And it's like, 20% of people.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, I think it's a skill with regularity that it's just going to be a necessary part of the toolkit moving forward. And luckily, there's a lot of cool tools out there to make it work. It's never been easier or cheaper to create world-class imagery, which makes it exciting. All right, man. Well, turning the page. So first of all, you're now at Data Dive, and I got to say, I got to hat tip you and Brandon, the entire team. It's been pretty impressive, the groundswell that you guys have built up with that company in a relatively short amount of time. And I think doing something fairly unique in the space. I mean, there's a lot of helium-10 offshoots and a lot of people do derivatives of other things. This is a fairly new to the world concept of pure play Amazon SEO, amongst other things. So tell us about Data Dive, how you got involved and kind of what that path's been like. You've been there a year, I think, right?
Yeah. So I've known Brandon for quite a while. I've never gotten the chance to work with him. Actually, when I left the agency, when I sold the agency, he was one of the people on the list that I really wanted to work with, but I didn't think that I was ready yet. Yeah. So I was like, let me hold off on this. And so after being at PickFu for a couple of years, I actually approached Brandon first about his content in Seller Systems. And Seller Systems is the coaching community. And if you've seen my presentations, right, I really like putting together educational content. And so I was actually a Seller Systems student in the past. And I was like, Brandon, I love what you're teaching here, but like, let's make these things engaging. Let's really, make these things look good. And now I'm starting to work on that. But what he was first told me is he's like, I've got this tool, Data Dive. You got to check it out. And I had used it. I didn't realize that Brandon owned it. Back then it was in Google Sheets. And so I spent pretty much the first year just working on things related to Data Dive, kind of getting the word out there. What it does is it's just a data analytics tool, a very deep data analytics tool for Amazon, where instead of just looking at one competitor and what keywords they're ranked for, you can look at 25 plus at a time. And when you see data in that kind of that wide of a format, it makes it really clear to see where there's gaps in relevancy for Amazon. And that's one piece of it. There's like parts of it that are, related to PPC. It's a complicated tool. I've been selling for years and it took me like a month and a half to really understand it. I think the reason that it's blown up so much though, and people really like it, we were talking about this earlier this weekend. Like when I started selling on Amazon, I used Jungle Scout and then I moved to Viral Launch and then I moved to Helium 10. And now there's a lot of programs that will do things that are similar to all of those. what makes Data Dive unique is like the whole process that it was built on was kind of built on these things that were taught for a long time inside seller systems. It's an entirely new workflow. And so like, I know where it's going in the future. And I think like there's a small number of people that do know where it's going in the future. It's really designed to help you figure out in a simple sense how the Amazon algorithm works. And like, this is exactly what you need to do to improve. Like, think of selling on Amazon as like 20 different levers. It's showing you what all of those levers are and if they're pulled down to the max amount.
Cool. So similar to like your work in the graphics world and hacking the brain listing design, you build out, you see enough listings, you do enough projects, you get obsessed with this particular concept and you start to turn over rocks and just make discoveries. In your time at Data Dive, of the accounts you've seen from an actual back-end keyword standpoint, what are some of the key lessons learned? Either mistakes that you see people make all the time, or just like, here are the things that if you do these right, you're going to be ahead of 95% of other sellers.
Number one thing is just nailing the launch, preserving, actually using that honeymoon. If you have a good product, you have a even decent listing images that are at least at par with everyone else. If you do the correct launch strategy of like, you index for the keywords, you're going to actually be able to rank very well within the first 30 days, just using that honeymoon period. The biggest issues I see are people, they just don't do that correctly in the beginning. They don't get attributed an index for the correct keywords, and then they're just going to spend a ton of time and money trying to recoup what they could have done in the launch period. So that's thing number one. The second thing is that at the end of the day, the SEO for Amazon, it's just a math equation, right? And I'm learning this for the first time, even on my own brands. I only ever did images. My business partner did all the PPC, all the SEO, all that kind of stuff. And so I'm really learning a lot of this for the first time. And what I'm seeing is like, and you can see this from Data Dive, like from when Data Dive first came out to like a year later, niches are getting more competitive. One of the biggest metrics on there is what percentage of keywords is this competitor ranked on page 1 for. And like, you would go for competitive niches. And we were looking at a video from a couple years ago. We saw a niche that was a very competitive niche. And a lot of these people were ranked for like 40, 50% of the keywords. Now I'll get into niches very commonly for not even a super competitive niche. And people will be ranked for 99 or 100%. You'll have like 2 or 3 people that are ranked for 90+% of those keywords on page 1. And so what's going to happen is people are going to figure this out, right? You can only stuff the title so much. Eventually performance is what's going to dictate success on Amazon. And you're going to be indexed for all the correct keywords. So that part of the math equation, I think like another year, 2 years, my prediction is you're going to go to any category, unless it's a newly created product, and the first 5 people are going to be ranked for like 99% of the keywords, and it's going to be like 1s, 2s, and 3s for each of these people for the first 5. And those people are basically going to be unbeatable at Amazon unless you come in with something that's really innovative.
So that's a great point. So, because I think there's been multiple phases and multiple camps across the years in the Amazon space. In the early days, it was much more about just entrepreneurial grit. And like, I've got the balls to go place an order from somebody in China in 2014 and ship it in. And like, they got rewarded because of first mover advantage and having that entrepreneurial grit. As time has gone on, I think it's become much more of a data equation, keywords, understanding the algorithm and kind of stacking that. And there's a lot of gamesmanship, I think, in that era where people were kind of, I would say inauthentically gaming the system to get that, but it worked. And you didn't necessarily need to have the best product, the best listings. As we enter this professional era where everyone's good at indexing.
Yep.
Everyone has pretty damn good listing images. Some might be a little bit better than others, but it's not like you've got horrendous listings anymore. What do you think is the competitive play if you're an Amazon seller and you're building new products and kind of thinking about the business in the next couple of years? How do you win?
You got to be good at everything, right? Like years ago, I remember a strategy, the first FBA conference I went to, a good friend of mine, Will, he was telling me his strategy for selling on Amazon is he would order sample quantities from Alibaba for 100 products. He'd put them all up. He'd see which out of those 100 products did well. He'd double down and actually make listings for those. And he made his first $4 million on Amazon using that strategy. Yeah. Like not even good images, no SEO, just like putting things out there, no PPC. Now it's like you think back in the day you could win with just, even at the agency, right? Like we would give people the advice. If you went into a niche, it didn't matter what was there. If just the listing images for most of the competitors were bad, you can go and just win just on listing images. Now what you have to do is you think there's like, I don't know, however many, 5, 10, 15 categories of success on Amazon. you got to be really good at all of them, and you got to be good at all of them from the beginning.
Yeah.
That's how you win.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
And it's not like it's rocket science to figure out.
Agreed.
If you're missing out on PPC, you're going to lose. If you're missing out on images, you're going to lose. Unless it's a very non-competitive category, which they're hard to find. They do exist, but
yeah, agreed. All right, man. Well, one of the things that I like most about you, and I think why I'm drawn to you, and we've had kind of a good friendship coming out of some meetings at conferences and stuff, is just how you live your life. You're in your late 20s. You travel around the world all year. You work from a laptop and a big travel bag for most of the year. You get to come to Park City to ski. It's a very dynamic, interesting life, and I think one that a lot of people fantasize about and want, but people oftentimes just get kind of locked into societal structures and just they live their life like everybody else. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but I think what you've done is truly unique in terms of how you live your life. I'm just curious how you went about doing that, because it really is interesting.
Yeah, so the first thing I'll say is I owe everything to the community of people that I've known and that have given me advice. Like when I was still back in college, this is after I dropped out, I was still really good friends with a group of just young guys that were just hustlers. Like some of them sold FBA, some of them did affiliate marketing, some of them just had remote jobs. And I was traveling around with them on a Europe trip, and we were really kind of like hacking it and, sharing hotels, different things like that. And I remember I was traveling, all of the other guys had jobs where they were working remote. They were running FBA businesses. They were working from their laptop. And I wasn't at the time. I was, I had one remote job, but it was like basically I was getting in to start at Amazon. And I remember looking at our budgets because we split all the expenses after we made an Excel sheet. And I remember totaling it up. It was like a 15-day Europe trip. And I was spending, it was basically $50 a day. And so I did the math and I was like, holy cow, I can live on the road full time if I can just make $2,000 a month remote. And that seemed like such a big goal for me. Wow, if I could just make $2,000 a month anywhere. And then, it's actually funny because when I left Amazon and I moved out to the Philippines, I had a really good job at Amazon, big stock options that I was never going to vest. And I had to repay a signing bonus. And I went out there to make $2,000 a month. And okay, this is a little bit long-winded of a story, but after I'd been out in the Philippines for a few months, a buddy of mine who was a big YouTuber, Matt, he had a little retreat. People came out and they basically wanted to learn how to have a remote lifestyle. And we were asking everyone in the group, what's your biggest goal? And people were just saying hey, I just want to be able to travel full time. I want to be on the road. And same way that I thought that this was just this crazy thing, that this is so hard to do, they all were saying this is their biggest goal. And it's just crazy because years after, I followed up with some of these people and I was like, hey, did you ever get the remote? And my advice to them was just go apply for remote jobs. Just make it your job for 2 weeks. Just apply all these different places. We showed them job boards, and very few of the people, I think maybe one out of the 15 people there actually did it. And I think what I'll say, I know that was a long-winded answer, but it's really not that hard. And this is years ago when there was way less remote jobs. Now a lot of even US companies, $2,000 a month is really, really easy to make working remote. And so step one is just figure out a way where you're not locked into a physical location, and just make it happen. It'll blow your mind how easy it is to make enough money to be full-time on the road. Yeah,
it's funny. I think it's like anything in life, even the big things, right? It's just the incremental actions that you typically wouldn't want to take because of the constraints that you have in your own brain and how you were raised, and just stepping through those and doing it a little bit at a time. And you look back in a year or two and you have a completely different life. But anyway, man, I'm really in awe of what you've done and built in the Amazon space. There's very few people I think you could point to and say pretty much everybody likes them. And I think you're definitely one of those. You're an eloquent speaker. I've learned a ton from you, and you're just a damn good human being. So it was awesome to host you here in Park City. Awesome to host you here on this podcast and learn a little bit more about your story and some nuggets along the way that will help other sellers. So thanks for all you do, man. It was awesome to have you here.
Appreciate it, man. Thanks so much.
Awesome. All right, guys. So that's a wrap for my first in-person Seller Sessions interview. Hopefully we'll do more of these on the road throughout 2023. We actually do have Seller Sessions live coming up in London on May 18th. It literally literally is one of the funnest cities in the world to go to, and it's one of the funnest events. So if you haven't booked a ticket yet, I highly recommend it. It is a fun weekend. I'll be presenting. There'll be a lot of cool people there. Obviously, Danny will be spitting and running some interesting stuff behind the scenes as well. So until next week, I'll have another video dropping in March. So until then, guys, hit subscribe, do all that fun stuff that the algorithms like,